Imagine this. Frozen European winter, 1643. You're a soldier huddled with your regiment, far from home. Temperatures plummeting well below freezing. Supply lines are stretched thin. Firewood is wet and scarce. You have one log left. That log represents your only chance of survival through the night. The cold is a lethal enemy. Without heat, you won't see dawn. Now imagine if a single log could provide total warmth for an entire night. It sounds impossible, yet this wasn't myth. It was a lost tactical solution that saved lives. Soldiers discovered an ingenious heating hack so effective it fundamentally changed how armies endured winter. Today we're diving deep into one of history's most overlooked survival secrets, the Swedish torch, or Swedish fire log. We'll uncover not just how it worked, but why it worked. The precise engineering that extracted maximum thermal energy from minimum fuel. Welcome back to The Lost Tactician. Let's begin. The Lost. During the 30 Years' War, Swedish soldiers faced conditions that would break most modern survival experts. Deep winters meant temperatures dropping to 30 degrees below zero. Forests were stripped bare by previous campaigns. Dry wood was luxury. Typical campfires, wasteful, radiating, open-flame ones, consumed fuel at devastating rates while barely distributing heat effectively. A soldier 3 feet away might still freeze while wood burned away in hours. The solution came from understanding wood itself. Wood isn't simple fuel. It's a complex structure filled with pockets of air. Soldiers learned that burning wood from the inside out, rather than outside in, could achieve something almost miraculous. A self-sustaining fire that burned slowly, cleanly, and with concentrated heat. The method was rooted in one principle, the chimney effect. When fire burns inside a vertical channel, hot air naturally rises and escapes from the top. As it does, a vacuum forms at the bottom and cool, oxygen-rich air rushes in. This creates a self-feeding cycle requiring almost no intervention once flames catch. The fire regulates itself, burning with steadier heat than any open campfire. The genius lay in understanding how to harness the laws of physics governing flame. The tactical cuts, precision in the field. A soldier standing in a snow-covered field with a hand axe and knife needed to transform an ordinary log into a heating apparatus. The method had to be fast, reliable, and effective with primitive tools. This is why it became so standardized soldiers could teach each other. The most common approach was the pie cut. A soldier selected a seasoned log, ideally hardwood like birch or oak, which burned longer and hotter. The log needed flat ends to stand upright. Using an axe, the soldier made vertical cuts from the top downward, dividing it as if slicing pie into 4 to 6 segments. The critical detail: these cuts never went all the way through. They stopped approximately 3/4 down, leaving the base intact. This was essential engineering. The uncut base kept the log stable, preventing segments from splaying apart as fire burned through. Where no saw existed, soldiers used a split method. They'd split the log completely into quarters using wedges and force. Then came crucial reassembly. They'd bind the 4 pieces back together tightly at the base using metal wire, flexible branches, strips of bark, or even twisted grass. This binding had to be tight enough to keep the pieces aligned as the wood contracted, but not so tight it prevented slight movement as the wood burned. Both methods achieved the same result, a log standing upright with internal channels, allowing fire to burn within its structure. The wood itself became furnace walls. Once the log was prepared, ignition required finesse. A soldier couldn't simply throw kindling at the top. The procedure was deliberate. First, the interior of the log, where cuts met, would be cleared. Then the soldier gathered tinder and kindling birch bark, which was highly prized for catching fire even when slightly damp, dried grass, small twigs, or really any available combustible material. This tinder was placed directly in the center, in the channel created by cuts. The initial flame was small, modest, but as kindling caught, something remarkable happened. Flames climbed up internal walls, heating wood directly. As embers fell into slits, they ignited interior surfaces. Vertical cuts became exhaust ports for rising hot air, and gaps at the base became intake vents for fresh oxygen. Within minutes, the log transformed into a controlled, self-regulating furnace. The beauty lay in efficiency. Unlike open campfires where much heat radiated outward and upward, the Swedish fire log concentrated heat. Wood became a heat-concentrating structure. Flames burned along inner surfaces while the exterior remained relatively cool. Soldiers could position themselves around it safely, each benefiting from radiant heat. A sleeping soldier could rest confidently, knowing the fire wouldn't collapse or burn out unexpectedly. The self-regulating chimney effect meant steady burning for hours, providing constant warmth through the night. For soldiers in the field, the Swedish fire log offered advantages beyond simple warmth. An open fire is visible for miles, announcing your position to enemy scouts. The Swedish fire log, burning quietly and internally, produced less visible flame and dramatic smoke. It was the difference between a beacon and a whisper. The log's flat top provided a stable cooking surface. Soldiers could balance canteens or mess kits directly on burning wood, using it as both a furnace and a cook stove. There was no need to construct tripods or, find rocks. One log served multiple purposes. Melting snow for drinking water became possible. Hardtack soaked in water could be warmed. Food eaten cold is harder to digest and provides less nutritional benefit to starving bodies. Warmth meant better sustenance and survival. Because the log stood elevated off the ground, heat distributed vertically rather than being, wicked away by snow or damp earth. In open campfires, significant heat melts snow or evaporates moisture instead of warming the surrounding air. The elevated log avoided this loss, maximizing warmth reaching soldiers' bodies. From a command perspective, the log offered operational advantages. Once lit, it burned 5 to 8 hours without constant attention. Soldiers needed rest. Vigilance required alert sentries. This self-sustaining fire meant more men could sleep, more energy preserved, precious resources in survival situations. Beyond the battlefield, the enduring relevance of the Swedish fire log really comes to light. Born from winter warfare desperation, its principles actually transcend that historical moment. It exemplifies a fundamental truth. When you deeply understand how the physical world works, things like thermodynamics, airflow, and combustion, you can accomplish seemingly impossible things with minimal resources. These days, modern survival enthusiasts, outdoor educators, and emergency preparedness specialists have, rediscovered this technique. Backpackers use it because it's fuel-efficient and reliable, which is pretty important out in the wild. Emergency management agencies actually document it as a legitimate survival tool. This technique, honestly, embodies the resourcefulness that defines human resilience. The human dimension of soldiers and survival is, I think, sometimes overlooked. History often reduces soldiers to abstractions, regiments, divisions, casualty figures, but behind each carefully cut and lit log stood an individual human being, desperate for warmth. The Swedish fire log really represents human ingenuity under pressure. This technique wasn't invented by a single genius. It emerged from countless soldiers experimenting, surviving or failing, learning from those before them. One soldier might have noticed a partially burned log glowing from within. Another reasoned that splitting wood increased internal surface area. Through accumulated observation conducted in the harshest conditions, the technique was perfected. Each refinement might have meant the difference between life-threatening cold and survivable discomfort. That's the real power, crystallized wisdom of people learning what they needed to live. For a soldier facing a winter night with minimal resources, transforming an ordinary log into reliable heat was, well, profound. It represented agency in situations allowing none. You had knowledge, a method, and executing it correctly meant you would survive. The Swedish fire log reminds us that survival knowledge exists. It's documented, repeatable, and available to anyone willing to learn. It teaches that survival isn't about sophisticated technology or abundant resources. It's about understanding principles, observing carefully, and executing precisely. If this deep dive has resonated, like this video and subscribe to The Lost Tactician for more content exploring tactical wisdom of history. Share with anyone valuing self-reliance and preparedness. History's greatest lessons come from understanding how ordinary people solved extraordinary problems. Stay warm, stay resourceful, stay curious. This is The Lost Tactician.